Vian sat in the dimly lit cafe, tapping her fingers against the wooden table. Her boyfriend was running late, which wasn't unusual, but tonight something felt off. She glanced around, her eyes scanning the crowd. Couples laughed, friends chatted, and the smell of coffee filled the air. It should have been comforting, but a strange chill ran down her spine. A deep voice broke the silence. Vian. She turned, smiling until she saw his face. Minjun looked pale, almost sick. His hands trembled as he placed them on the table. His eyes darted around the room like he was being watched. Are you okay? He swallowed hard, his throat bobbing. I can't do this. What? Us. I'm sorry, I just can't. The words hit her like a slap. Minjun, where is this coming from? What's wrong? Did I? It's better this way. Please don't ask. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. He didn't even meet her eyes before turning and rushing out of the door. Mine sat there stunned, her hands clenched into fists. This wasn't the first time. Vine walked through the university courtyard, her shoulders slumped, feet dragging against the pavement. The usual energy she carried was gone, replaced with an emptiness that weighed on her chest. The whispers of the student passing by felt distant, their laughter almost mocking. Another breakup, another guy leaving without an explanation. It was becoming a pattern, and he was starting to wonder if the problem was her. A sudden warmth enveloped her as a strong arm wrapped around her shoulders, pulling her close. The scent of the expensive cologne and something deeply familiar filled her senses. What's with that face, pretty girl? Who dared to make you sad? One sighed, barely glancing up. She didn't even have the energy to fake a smile. I don't know what's wrong with me. He tilted his head, his dark eyes scanning her face with a look she could not quite decipher. What do you mean? She stopped walking, frustration bubbling inside her. It happened again. Minjun broke up with me, just like the others. No reason, no explanation. He just left. His grip on her shoulder tightened for a split second before relaxing, but she didn't notice. Am I that scary? Am I not pretty enough? Am I that bad? Her voice cracked slightly. She let out a humorless chuckle, her fingers twisting together. Am I that unlovable? The air around them shifted before she could react. Taehyung's fingers gripped her chin, jerking her face up aggressively. A gasp escaped her lips as she was forced to meet his gaze. Intense, dark, burning with something she didn't understand. Don't ever say that again. His voice was low, almost a growl. Her breath hitched. There was something terrifying in his expression, something possessive, something dangerous. For a moment she couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then, as quickly as it came, the storm in his eyes softened. His grip loosened, fingers cradling her face gently instead. He leaned in, pressing a lingering kiss on her forehead, his lips warm against her skin. They don't deserve a diamond like you. Vine blinked the intensity of the moment, leaving her speechless. She didn't notice the way his jaw clenched, the way his fingers twitched as if restraining himself. But for the first time that day, she felt safe. But was she really? Alright, enough sulking. We are bunking class. Let's go. Vine frowned, snapping out of her thoughts. What? No, I don't want to. But before she could finish, Taehyung had already grabbed her hand, pulling her forward with a firm grip. Taehyung. He didn't slow down, weaving through the students effortlessly as he dragged her along. You need a distraction, and I know just the place. Vine tried to protest, but his grip was strong, unwavering. But no buts, we are going to the amusement park. End of discussion. She ignored, realizing there was no point in arguing. Taeyong always got his way. You are impossible, he smirked, glancing back at her. And you love me for it. Vine rolled her eyes, but a small smile tugged at her lips. Maybe he was right. Maybe she did need this. What she didn't know was that Taeyong had other plans from the start, and no matter how much she tried to escape it, she was already caught in his web without knowing it. The amusement park was alive with bright lights, laughter, and the scent of cotton candy mixed with popcorns. The moment they stepped inside, Taehyung glanced at Ryan, watching as her eyes scanned the rides, her expression still hesitant. All right, princess, first ride. Ryan sighed, crossing her arms. I never agreed to this, you know, and yet here you are. She rolled her eyes, but before she could argue, he grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward the nearest roller coaster. Taehyung, no way. But he was already leading her to the front of the line, his grip firm but casual. as if holding her hand was the most natural thing in the world. They rode the coasters, the spinning teacups, and even the drop tower, where Vine screamed so loudly Taehyung couldn't stop laughing. He was scared too. Somewhere between the rides, she forgot why she was upset in the first place. Hours passed in the blur of excitement. Vine was grinning now, her cheeks flushed from all the laughter. She hadn't even realized how many times Taehyung had casually touched her, how his hands never left hers when they walked, how he hugged her from behind when she won a prize, how his arms stayed wrapped over her shoulder as they moved through the crowds. It felt normal, just Taehyung being Taehyung. She didn't question it. As the sun began to set, they sat near a food stall, eating fries and burgers. Taehyung glanced at Vine, watching her with amusement. Feeling better, Vine exhaled, leaning back in her seat. Yeah, actually, I am. He smiled, satisfied. Told you, I always know what's best for you. She laughed, not catching the deeper meaning behind his words. But he meant every word, and soon she would understand. Days passed, and Vine felt lighter. The weight of Minjun's sudden departure no longer sat heavily on her mind. Maybe it was because of Taehyung, his constant presence, his unwavering attention, the way he made sure she was never alone. In university, they were inseparable, or rather, Taehyung made sure they were. Whenever she went, he was there, walking beside her, sitting next to her in lectures, waiting for her outside her classes. Their bonds was more than just friends, and people noticed. They were both popular, standing out in the crowd without trying. The boys admired Vian as she was so beautiful, but they were afraid to approach her for some reason. Girls admired Taeyong whispering about his deep voice, his sharp features, and the way he carried himself with effortless confidence. But no matter how many girls tried to approach him, he never looked at anyone else. His eyes were always on Vian. Some thought they were dating, others wondered why they were not. But Vian never gave it much thought. Taeyong was just Taeyong, her best friend since high school, the one person who had been with her through everything. What she didn't know was the thing hadn't always been this way. In the beginning, Taeyong had been just her friend. He had laughed with her, shared secrets, and protected her like any best friend would. But somewhere along the way, his feelings shifted. It started as something small, lingering glances, a strange jealousy when she talked about other guys, but as time passed, it grew. His need for her, his possessiveness, his obsession. Until one day he realized he didn't just want her to be her best friend, he wanted to be the only one in her life. And if he had to make sure no one else stayed by her side, then so be it. But Vine had no idea. Not yet. The university cafeteria buzzed with the usual chatter and clatter as students gathered for lunch. In a quiet corner, Vine and Taehyung sat side by side eating their lunch as they exchanged casual banter. He leaned forward with a playful glint in his eyes. Hey, how about a movie night at my place this weekend? Vine's face brightened at the suggestion, a spark of excitement cutting through the mundane routine of her day. A movie night sounds perfect. It's been a while since we did something fun like that. And since it might get late, why don't you stay over? No need to worry about getting home in the dark. One hesitated for a split second. The idea of staying over, still familiar from their countless past sleepovers when they were in high school. She knew there was nothing new between them, just two friends sharing an easy evening. Sure, why not? Taeyong's smile deepened as he reached out casually, his hands brushing against her, a gesture so familiar that Vine barely registered it beyond the comfort of a long-time friendship. They had been inseparable since high school, their closeness having become a natural part of each other's lives. As they finished their lunch and the conversation drifted toward upcoming classes, the promise of the movie night lingered in the back of Vine's mind, a welcome distraction from the small trouble of university life. Unaware Vine, however, every gentle squeeze of his hands, every casual arm wrap was loaded with unspoken intent. Taehyung's feelings, once the innocent affection of a best friend, had grown into a consuming obsession. A need to guard her against the world, ensure that no one else could ever come close. For Vian, it was just another sleepover with a cherished friend. At least that's what she thought. For Taeyong, it was another chance to tighten the invisible bond that he played made them inseparable. The night was set, movie night at Taeyong's place. Wine sat on the couch, a ball of popcorn in her lap. While Taehyung selected a movie, she didn't question his choice, too focused on getting comfortable. The horror movie began, eerie music filling the room. At first, she was fine, munching on popcorns casually, but as the scenes got scarier, she found herself flinching, gripping the cushion tightly. Taehyung smirked, just as he planned. Every time a jump scare happened, one instinctively curled closer, and each time he would take the chance to hold her hand, wrap his arm around her, or let her lean into him. She also felt comfortable in his arms. By the time the movie ended, she was still tense. Alright, that was intense. Let's watch something light now. Please, I need a break from all that horror. He chuckled and put on a rom-com, the atmosphere quickly shifting. Wine relaxed again, getting lost in the playful scenes and romance unfolding on the screen. Then a soft scene came up. Nothing too dramatic, just a sweet, gentle moment. Taehyung's throat went dry. His grip on the couch tightened slightly as he imagined himself in that scene with her. But before he could spiral too deep, he shook the thought away. Not now, not like this. Instead, he casually wrapped his arm over her shoulder, pulling her close. Wine didn't react, still focused on the movie, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. At least that's what he thought. He let out a breath, calming himself. I think he stopped mid sentence, realizing Wyan had already fallen asleep. He turned to her, his gaze softening. She looked peaceful, unaware of the storm in his mind. Slowly, he reached out, brushing a strand of hair away from her face, his fingers lingering on her cheek. His eyes dropped to her. A thought crept in, a selfish, forbidden thought. He could just. No. He clenched his jaw, scolding himself. Letting out a deep sigh, he switched off the TV and carefully lifted her into his arms. She stirred slightly but didn't wake up. Taehyung was walking casually, waiting for Ryan when a murmur caught his attention. Jay from broadcasting department is proposing to Ryan. Let's go, we can't miss it. His step halted, his blood boiled, his vision blurred with pure rage. Without another thought, he followed the crowd. When he arrived, the scene in front of him made his entire body stiffen. Jay stood before Ryan holding out a small bouquet, his expressions nervous but hopeful. And the worst part, everyone around them was chanting. Seems like he doesn't love his life. His jaw clenched so tightly it hurts. He felt as if he would explode any second. Then someone whispered, It's Taehyung. The voice followed quickly. Why is he looking like he's about to? But he didn't care. His gaze locked onto Ryan, who, to his horror, was smiling. Just a little, but enough to shatter his last thread of patience. That was it. He stormed forward, shoving past the students. Without a word, he grabbed Ryan's arms aggressively, his fingers digging into her skin. Taehyung, see, I knew they had something. She yelped as he started dragging her away. The force in his grip was unrelenting. Let's go. Let go. What are you doing? But he didn't stop. He didn't even hear her. His mind was clouded with fury. The crowd was left in stunned silence as he pulled her toward the parking lot. What the hell? Jay is waiting. That was it. That name. His blood boiled over. He yanked open the car door and shoved her inside before climbing in himself. Are you crazy? He ignored her, starting the engine with a sharp twist. The car sped off, the silence inside, thick with tension. Wine stared at him, heart pounding in confusion and fear. They reached his house in minutes. Theon got out, stormed to her side, and yanked the door open. Without a word, he pulled her out, dragging her inside. Theon stopped. What the hell is wrong with you? The moment they stepped in, he slammed the door shut. In the next second, his breathing was heavy, his dark eyes burning into hers. You were mine from the start, and you'll be mine till the end. Wine's breath hitched, his grip on her waist tightened. Wine's eyes widened in shock. If you want that Jay safe and sound, reject him. Taehyung, you're scaring me. What are you saying? And why are you saying this? We are friends. Taehyung's grip on her waist tightened as his eyes darkened even more. Then his voice roared through the walls, cutting her off. We are not just friends. Wine flinched so hard that her back pressed further against the wall. Her heart pounded in her chest, fear creeping into her bones. But Taehyung, he didn't care. He was blinded by jealousy, by possession, by the thought of losing her. I consider you more than just any friend. I want you as my partner for eternity. Wine's breath hitched, The intensity in his gaze was suffocating. She wanted to move to push him away, but his grip wouldn't let her. Can't you see how much I love you? Vine stared at him, her lips parting, but no words came out. The Taehyung she had known, the one who laughed with her, the one who comforted her, was nowhere to be found. Standing before her was someone else entirely. Someone desperate, someone dangerous, someone who was ready to burn the whole world down just to keep her by his side. What if I don't accept it? Taehyung's eyes flickered with something unreadable. His fingers dug into her wrist lightly, as if preparing himself for the worst. I've never considered you more than just a best friend. I can. But before she could finish, he cut her off, his voice breaking with raw desperation. Once breath stopped, her entire body froze. I never imagined a life without you, and I never will. And I don't want to see you with anyone else, so it's better to. It's useless without you anyway. The weight of his words crashed into her like a tidal wave. Her hands trembled as she tried to push him away, but he caught her wrist effortlessly beside her shoulder. His grip wasn't forceful, it wasn't meant to hurt her. It was pleading, begging, desperate. Tell me it's not true. Vine looked at him, her vision blurry from tears. You don't consider me just a friend. I know it. You know it. Then why are we lying? His words hit her harder than anything else because deep down she had always known. She had ignored the signs brushed off his possessiveness, his constant presence, his need to have her all to himself. She had convinced herself it was all just friendly gestures. But now, standing here tapped in his gaze, she realized she had been lying to herself all along. Both of them were crying now, silent, raw, unspoken emotions filling the space between them. Then, without a second thought, Taehyung laid in, closing the distance between them. He had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but nothing could compare to the real thing. Vine's eyes widened in shock. Her heart pounded against her ribs. He was trembling, holding on to her like she was his last chance at survival, like if he let go, the world would shatter beneath his feet. And for the first time, Vine didn't know if she wanted to push him away. His words were still surrounding her thoughts, that she was feeling numb from anything. It was intense, he was intense, and his feelings. Vine's body reacted before her mind could process. She pressed against his chest, trying to push him away, but Taehyung only tightened his grip, refusing to let go, until she finally gathered all her courage and shoved him back, and then the sharp sound echoed through the room. What is wrong with you? You are sick. Taehyung's face turned slightly from the impact, his cheeks stinging, his jaw clenched, not in anger but in pain, but not from the slap, but from the rejection. The rejection he never imagined. His fingers twitched as he slowly turned back to look at her. His dark eyes no longer held just possession. There was hurt, deep, raw, gut wrenching hurt. But he didn't let it stop him. Before she could take another step back, he grabbed her wrist and yanked her forward. Be honest with me. You never saw me as more than a friend. Vine's breath hissed. His face was piercing, searching her face, waiting. Her lips parted, hesitation flickering in her eyes. No. But Young didn't move. He didn't even blink. He just stared at her because he knew she was lying. He could see it. The slight tremble in her voice, the way her eyes refused to meet his for too long. She was lying to him, lying to herself. Is that so? Vine swallowed hard, trying once again to push him away, but his grip didn't budge. His fingers curled tighter around her wrist, keeping her locked in place. Look in my eyes and say it again. She refused to meet his gaze, her heart hammering inside her chest, so he reached for her chin, his fingers tilting her face, forcing her to look at him. It doesn't matter. Why doesn't it matter? It just doesn't. I know you don't just consider me a mere friend. Then why are you giving me and yourself this pain? His voice was no longer just possessive. It was pleading, breaking, but Vine couldn't take it. She couldn't let herself give in. With trembling hands, she shoved him back, her eyes burning with tears. Because I don't want to lose you. Taehyung froze, his brows furrowed in confusion. What do you mean? Vine's shoulder shook as she cried harder, her emotions spilling out uncontrollably. Everyone's leaving me. I don't want you to leave me too. I want to stay with you forever, and that's only possible if we stay friends. Taehyung ran a frustrated hand through his hair, stepping back, his mind racing. No one left you, Vian. I made them leave you. Once breath hitched, she stared at him, her teary eyes wide in shock. I can't see you with anyone else. You're mine. We'd never be more than friends. The moment those words left her mouth, something inside Taehyung snapped. His face twisted with rage, his fist clenching. And I'll never see you as just a mere friend. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Both of them breathing hard, both of them hurting. It's your choice, Ryan. If you keep pushing me away, you'll lose me this way too. His words hung in the air like a warning, like a promise. Ryan stood frozen in place watching as Taehyung grabbed his keys and walked out, slamming the door behind him. The sound echoed through the empty house, leaving an unbearable silence behind. Her knees gave out and she collapsed onto the floor, her sobs breaking through the quiet. This is not supposed to be this hard. Then why does it hurt so much? She buried her face in her hands, letting the pain consume her. After what felt like forever, she finally forced herself to stand up, wiped her tears, and walked out. 2 days passed. Wine did not go to university, neither did Taehyung. On the third day, when Wine finally arrived, Mama spread through the hallway, curious whispers, judgmental stares. Before she could ignore them, someone stepped in front of her. Yuna, Taehyung's and Vine's senior. You said you and Taehyung are just best friends. Then what's all this drama? Vine exhaled sharply, trying to walk past her. It's none of your business. But Yuna grabbed her arms, voice laced with venom. You know, you are making every man crazy over you. Vine stopped, then with a cold smirk, she looked at her. You said 'cause you failed? Yuna's eyes widened. Rage twisted her features, but before she could speak, Vine pushed her aside. Move away. And with that, she walked off, leaving Yuna speechless. Vine walked toward her class, but her mind was elsewhere. Her eyes kept scanning the hallways looking for him, Taehyung. They hadn't spoken in days. He hadn't contacted her, and she hadn't reached out either. But something felt wrong. A heavy uneasiness settled in her chest. His words replayed in her mind, sending a shiver down her spine. She shook her head aggressively, trying to push the thought away. No, he's not that crazy. He would not. Just as she was about to enter the classroom, a conversation nearby caught her attention. Taehyung's still in the hospital. Yeah, did you not visit him? His condition was really bad and why didn't let him finish? She turned sharply, her heart hammering in her chest. Which hospital? The boys looked at her in shock. You don't know? You two are always together. Seoul Medical Center.